the storytelling talent. Storytellers are the keepers of fairy legends and tales. If a story's ever been told in Pixie Hollow, there's sure to be a storyteller who knows it. As a result, these fairies are unofficial historians of Neverland. A storyteller is likely to know anything that can be found in the library, and many things that can't. In public performances, the storytellers use verse and other poetic language to tell their stories. They create pixie dust animations to bring the stories to life. This tends to be especially effective when a scary story is being told. Most of the time, the storytellers do their work at fairy tale theater, but occasionally they can be persuaded to tell a little anecdote or even a joke in a quieter setting. Storytellers tend to be wise about fairy nature and can give useful advice. Lyria. Lyria is one of the greatest storytellers the talent has ever known. Her specialty is spinning grand epic tales based on fairy legend. Lyria has brought the art of pixie dust illustrations to a new level, often creating startling, lifelike accompaniments to her stories. Her performances can last 4 hours, but her audience is always so wrapped up in the story they hardly notice the time. Despite her confidence on the stage, Lyria can be quite shy in person. Only her closest friends know her greatest wish: to travel to the mainland and see a human play. Lyria drinks lemongrass tea with agave nectar to soothe her throat after telling a long story. Seasonal talents. Most fairies have talents that serve all 4 seasons, whether directly or indirectly. The storytellers, for instance, inspire all the fairies to do their best work they can. The garden talents lend their green thumbs mainly to spring and summer, but there's always work for them in autumn and winter as well. Every season has need of the water fairies, the tinkers, even the fast-flying fairies. But there are some fairies who specialize in only one season. These fairies have a talent that is uniquely suited for a particular time of the year. Some examples include snowflake fairies, winter, pumpkin plumping garden fairies, autumn, summer rain fairies, summer, and leaf unfurling fairies, spring. When these fairies are not stationed on the mainland, overseeing their seasons, they are camped out in one of the 4 seasonal areas of Pixie Hollow, honing their crafts. Spring Valley. The Minister of Spring. Although spring is a wild, merry, and carefree season, the Minister of Spring is not any of those things. The minister imposes perfect order on the preparations for his season. It's a good thing, too. Things have a way of getting out of hand. What with garden fairies chasing baby flower bulbs about and animal fairies teaching fledglings to fly. As serious as he is, the Minister of Spring is known for his kindness, especially to plants. Some garden fairies speculate that he was a garden talent before becoming the minister, but nobody knows for sure. The Minister of Spring usually wears a neatly cut suit of spring blooms. The Minister of Spring has a pet crocus that sits in a pot on his windowsill. Tinkerbell's Inventions. The Minister of Spring is already a little high-strung, but he always looks even more nervous than usual when Tinkerbell is around. There is a reason for this. When Tinkerbell first arrived in Neverland, the preparations for spring were well underway, but Tink, who was newly arrived and inexperienced, made a few mistakes, and they weren't small ones. Disaster ensued, and spring nearly had to be cancelled. Luckily, this calamity caused Tink to find her true vocation, inventing. She whipped up a number of time-saving devices, and the fairies were able to put spring back together just in time to bring it to the mainland. Since then, Tink's inventions have made all of the seasons happen more smoothly and efficiently, and all the ministers are grateful for her help. Tink's inventions can be found all across Pixie Hollow. Painting the seasons. Tinkerbell's paintball thrower certainly makes the springtime ladybug painting go faster, but it isn't the most accurate tool. When a keen eye for color is needed, expert painters step in. Iridessa. One of the most talented light fairies, Iridessa, is a perfectionist. She's passionate about her work, but she's easily stressed. Although she tries to look on the bright side of things, she often spies disaster lurking. But she's right more often than she's wrong, so the other fairies usually listen to her. Iridessa is a bit of a know-it-all, but that's one of the things her friends love about her. What other fairy knows the name of every single firefly in Pixie Hollow? Who else has identified 34 distinct ways to fold a sunbeam? Iridessa is one of a kind. Iridessa invented a popular fairy drink, lemonade with bubbles of sunlight in it. Be warned, a case of the hiccups after a glass of Des-Aid can be almost blinding. Fireflies in Pixie Hollow. Each day at twilight, Iridessa and her friends gather the last sunbeams of the evening and use them to help light the fireflies. This ensures that the work of bringing the seasons to the mainland can continue well into the dark of the night. Fireflies are very useful to the fairies, whose glows are not always bright enough to light their way. Fairy games. The fireflies aren't the only creatures in Pixie Hollow who like to play. Many of the fairies' games involve their other animal and insect friends. For example, Pillbug Marbles, where the pillbugs steer themselves as they roll. Another favorite is the Hummingbird Reverse Race. Here, the fairies whose hummingbirds gets to the finish line last wins. Hummingbirds are very impatient, so it's hard to keep them from trying to get there first. Some fairy games are just for fairies. Three-winged races are a great favorite in Summer Glade. Summer Glade. The Minister of Summer. It's quite possible that no one in Pixie Hollow enjoys her job quite as much as the Minister of Summer. In fact, it may be the case that no one enjoys anything as much as this free-spirited fairy. She has a merry, ringing laugh. When something funny happens in Summer Glade, they can hear her laughing all the way over into Winter Woods. Unlike the Minister of Spring, the Minister of Summer is not terribly interested in organization. But she's unflappable and hardworking, and her summers on the mainland are always a success. The Minister of Summer is always dressed in summer blossoms. The Minister of Summer has nearly 20 combs, but none of them is up to the task of taming her curly mane. The Coiffure Talent fairies keep trying, though. Every year, on her arrival day, they give her another one. Fairies love to give each other presents. They have plenty of opportunities. In Pixie Hollow, gifts are usually exchanged on arrival days, during the turning of the seasons, at the fairy dance, at tea parties, or just because. Fairy gifts are often handmade. A fairy may also give an interesting found object if it reminds her of her friends. And even though fairies especially like leaving surprise presents for each other, you can often tell the talent of the gift giver by the way the present is wrapped. For example, if a gift is wrapped in spider lace, it may be from an animal fairy. If it is wrapped in blueprint paper, you can bet it's from a tinker fairy. If it is wrapped in flower petals, it is probably from a garden fairy. Wrapped in a bubble? Water fairy. Fairies and water. Fairies, all fairies, not just the water talents, love water. Silver Mist. Water fairy Silver Mist, Sil to her friends, has a wonderfully offbeat way of looking at the world. Free-spirited and optimistic, she sometimes listens to her heart more than her head, and that can get her into trouble every now and then. But she's easygoing and affectionate, and impossible not to love. And although she and Iridessa could not be less alike, the two fairies are very close. There's a saying in Pixie Hollow, water fairies have more fun. In Silver Mist's case, it may just be true. Whether stopping by the babbling brook to catch up on Pixie Hollow gossip, telling jokes to her pet goldfish, or learning to juggle raindrops, Silver Mist enjoys life to the fullest. Silver Mist's prized possession is a perfume mister filled with water. What more welcome fragrance is there for a water fairy? Fairy fashions. Silver Mist, like many water fairies, can make gorgeous, though short-lived garments and jewels out of water. Her friends especially love to wear these cool, beautiful creations on a hot summer day. Other fairies are just as inventive when it comes to fashion. Here, a human's handkerchief becomes a simple sundress for a fairy. Lost things. Lost things are what fairies call the trinkets from the mainland that wash up on the shores of Neverland. They find coins, jewelry, gears, bolts, even toys. Before Tinkerbell arrived, these things were thought to be useless to fairies, but Tink found a use for them by creating tools to save spring. Tinkerbell pioneered the idea of using lost things in Inventions, and there are now many uses for human objects in Pixie Hollow. Silver Mist uses a silver spoon to water ski. Tink's bed is made from a seashell. Rosetta has yet to figure out what her beautiful new vase used to be. Autumn Forest. The Minister of Autumn. Wise and logical, the Minister of Autumn is hard to fluster. He oversees the preparations for autumn with a steady hand and a kind word for every fairy. Generally, hands off, the Minister of Autumn would rather trust the fairies in his charge to do their jobs well than get in their way. But when the time comes to bring autumn to the mainland, he can be found in the thick of things, ensuring that nothing goes wrong. The Minister of Autumn makes his home in Autumn Forest. His house doesn't have glass in the windows. He likes to feel the crisp fall breeze all the time. The Minister of Autumn usually wears a suit of orange, brown, and red leaves. His preferred method of transportation is riding on the fallen leaf of a sycamore tree and being whisked along by the wind. Obscure talents. The turning of any season requires the work of all sorts of fairies, but it takes some of the most specialized talents to bring autumn. Take, for example, the early frost warning talents. They sit quietly on the mainland during the fall and watch for an unseasonable chill. And then there are the crisp fall breeze specialists from the fast flying talent. And don't forget about the pumpkin plumping fairy. The Hibernation bedtime story fairies are a subset of the animal talent, though the storyteller talents often try to claim them as their own. Fairy foods. Fairies are great gardeners and they love to eat fresh fruits and vegetables. Some of the best food in Pixie Hollow is harvested in Autumn Forest, where there is a splendid pumpkin patch and an apple tree with the sweetest, juiciest apples. These plants are looked after by the garden fairies, who can always tell when a vine wants something to lean on, when a tree needs a little extra room, or when a squash is perfectly ripe. Fairies hate to let anything go to waste, so they even eat the fruit of sour plum trees, although they have to be a bit inventive about it. Wheat kernels are just the right size for a fairy snack on the go. Rosetta. Rosetta is a garden fairy. She has excellent manners, but she's also very quick-witted. Rosetta always tries to look her best, and she loves giving beauty tips to her friends and her flowers. Fairies don't age, of course, but Rosetta arrived in Pixie Hollow before most of her friends, so she's a little wiser than they are. She's also had more time to collect shoes. In fact, Rosetta has more pairs of shoes than any other fairy in the history of Pixie Hollow. And because she almost always flies to get where she's going, most of her shoes are entirely decorative. Rosetta is the inventor of the flower Parasol. Fairy homes. There are tiny homes tucked here and there throughout every corner of Pixie Hollow. Fairies work hard to decorate their homes to suit their personalities. Rosetta's home, made of flowers, with a chimney from a human's watering can, suits her just fine. Iridessa's home is another beauty. It's admired by other light fairies for its spectacular cut-glass bowl dome and the huge quartz crystal set at the peak. And the Tinker fairies are impressed by its innovative use of a human object. Tink helped out, but it was Iridessa's idea. The prisms formed by the many facets of the cut-glass roof give Iridessa plenty of rainbows to look at when she's at home. Winter woods. the Minister of Winter. The Minister of Winter is a blunt, uncompromising fairy. She knows how to get the job done, and she isn't interested in nonsense. What nobody in Pixie Hollow knows is that the Minister of Winter does have one impractical secret habit. She washes her hair in ice water to make it shiny. It's a tip she acquired from Rosetta, who has vowed to keep quiet. The Minister of Winter is too busy to be vain, however. In addition to leading the annual effort to bring winter to the mainland, the minister has identified 17 different classes of snowflake. She is considered a great scholar of snow. The Minister of Winter wears a gown woven from fine threads of frost. Fairies and snow. Winter fairies love to play in the snow. Whether skating down a frozen stream or building tiny snow forts, there's always plenty of fun for fairies to have in winter woods. Fairy winter wear. Outside of snowflake and frost talents, never fairies can't take the cold of winter woods for very long. So if they're going to play in the snow, they need to bundle up much more than usual. Fairies wear all sorts of hats, but Fawn's favorite is an old hummingbird nest. Triple ply spider silk is an elegant solution for cold weather. It's very warm, but not at all bulky or awkward. Some fairies prefer to use pygmy goose down for stuffing their jackets. Dandelion fluff is an excellent liner for capes and boots. Fairy holidays and celebrations. As busy as the Never Fairies are bringing the seasons to the mainland, they always find time to relax and enjoy themselves. A fairy's arrival day, the yearly anniversary of the day she came into being of Pixie Hollow, is always celebrated by her friends. And then there are celebrations for each season, such as the autumn revelry, which marks the end of the fall, and the blooming of the everblossom, which marks the beginning of the spring. And sometimes there is no reason. After all, if a fairy feels like having a midnight tea party with her best friend, who's to stop her? Clank and Bubble. Clank and Bubble are both tinkers. They're good-natured fellows and best friends, and they were the first fairies to befriend Tinkerbell when she arrived in Neverland. Clank is a big, boisterous sparrow man who sometimes plugs his ears with fluff when he's hammering things. Bubble is short compared to other fairies, and he wears dewdrop goggles for detail work. Clank and Bubble both wear leaf overalls made from the toughest fronds they could find. Once, for a practical joke, Clank replaced the dewdrops in Bubble's eyedropper with rose water, and Bubble spent a good hour convinced Pixie Hollow had turned pink overnight. Fairy friendships. Fairies are affectionate creatures. They tend to develop long-lasting friendships, usually with other fairies, but occasionally an especially shy animal fairy will become best friends with, say, a field mouse. And there's at least one garden fairy who has made a geranium her closest confidant. Geraniums are excellent secret keepers. Everyday magic. Somewhere, the island of Neverland is bobbing in the sea. On that enchanted isle, some of the fairies of Pixie Hollow are talking, laughing, and singing. Others are sitting quietly, enjoying the beauty and the magic of their world. And although an ordinary human will hardly ever set foot in their world, the fairies will always bring a little bit of magic to ours.